Why is there something instead of nothing? I mean, I want you to really just sit with that for a second.
It's quite the question.
It really is. It's a question proposed by the philosopher Leibniz centuries ago. And, well, honestly, it's the ultimate mic drop question of human existence.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, why is there a universe? Why are you sitting here listening to this deep dive? Why is there, I don't know, anything at all?
Right. And the text we're looking at today tackles exactly that.
Yeah. Today we are ripping apart this dense but just utterly fascinating academic paper.
Hmm.
And it essentially argues that you cannot even begin to ask that question without realizing that your own mind is, in a way, actively hallucinating the answer.
It's a profound premise, really. The paper is titled Metaphysics: Intelligible Questions and the Explicable World of Intentionality.
Quite a mouthful.
It is, yeah. It was written by Tennyson Samraj and published in the Athens Journal of Philosophy. And you're right, it argues that to answer Leibniz's question, you first have to draw a really hard line between two concepts we tend to blur together:
Which are,
physics and metaphysics.
okay, let's unpack this because, I mean, those words get thrown around a lot, usually as, like, sci-fi movie jargon.
Right, exactly.
So how does this paper actually separate them? Our mission here is to be your shortcut through all these dense philosophical weeds, so how do we make sense of this?
Well, it comes down to the difference between the reductive and the non-reductive.
Okay, reductive meaning what exactly?
Physics is reductive. It's the study of what is physically actually there in the universe. If you break reality down to its absolute bare bones, you get the 118 elements on the periodic table.
Right, the literal building block.
Exactly. You get quarks, bosons, electromagnetic fields. That's physics. But metaphysics, on the other hand, is non-reductive.
So it doesn't ask what is there.
No, it doesn't. It asks about the nature of what is there. And here is the core argument of the whole paper. The nature of reality is completely dependent on a conscious mind.
Okay, wait, let me see if I can translate this. Think of physics as a literal pile of plastic Lego bricks.
I like that analogy.
Right, so the physical weight of each brick, the chemical composition of the dye used to make them,
Yeah.
like red or blue, that is physics. It is reductive.
Yes.
But if you snap those bricks together and build a castle, the concept of the castle is metaphysics. Like, the plastic exists independently in the universe, sure, but the castle only exists because your conscious mind looks at that specific arrangement of plastic and gives it meaning.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
Because without a mind to interpret it, it's just, well, it's just a pile of plastic.
Right, the plastic bricks are what philosophers call an empirical given. You can weigh them, you can measure them. But the castle is what the text calls a phenomenological given.
Okay, that's a heavy academic term.
It is, but it simply means something that is known entirely through your subjective experience of it. It only exists because you are experiencing it. And the paper introduces a critical term here: intentionality.
Right, and we should clarify that right away, I think. Because in everyday conversation, intentionality means, doing something on purpose, like leaving your keys by the door intentionally.
Yeah, but in philosophy, it means something very different. Intentionality means aboutness.
Aboutness.
Yeah, aboutness. It is the unique ability of a conscious mind to be about something or directed towards something. I mean, a rock cannot be about anything. It just is.
Sure.
But your thoughts can be about a castle. Your mind takes the physical input of the universe and directs meaning toward it. The author argues that you simply cannot separate the physical reality of the universe from the metaphysical awareness of it. They are locked together.
Wow. Okay, so if the castle only exists because a conscious mind is there to interpret the plastic, what exactly is that mind made of?
Now that is the real question.
Because that shifts the focus from the vast cosmic universe, right down to the 3-pound organ inside the human skull.
And this is where the reductive reality of what we actually are becomes incredibly humbling.
How so?
Well, if we break human beings down into pure physics, our own internal Lego bricks, we are essentially just water and trace minerals.
Just water.
Basically, yeah. According to the text, mass-wise, the human body is roughly 65% oxygen, 18% carbon, 9.5% hydrogen, along with some nitrogen, calcium, and iron. That is physically all you are.
Wait. Every single one of those atoms is as old as the universe.
Yeah.
Like that hydrogen was forged in ancient stars, it drifted through space, clumped together, and eventually formed me.
Exactly.
But those atoms are completely dead. They're insentient. I mean, hydrogen doesn't have feelings. Carbon doesn't have an imagination.
Which brings us to the central paradox of human existence. The text cites the philosopher Colin McGinn, who points out this really jarring fact. The human brain is about 80% water.
80% water.
80%. So we are forced to ask how a wet organ, made mostly of water and insentient dead atoms, somehow generates an immaterial self.
Yeah, how does it generate that intentionality we were just talking about? That subjective ability to experience the world.
Exactly. How does water turn into consciousness? The source material literally calls this a miracle because, physically speaking, it shouldn't happen.
But, I mean, calling it a miracle feels like giving up, doesn't it?
Okay.
Does the paper offer any scientific mechanism for how this actually works?
It does explore that. It notes that the brain alone isn't enough. It requires a highly specific environment, exact temperature, atmospheric pressure, oxygen, and nutrients.
Right, because without those, the brain is just, well, inert meat.
Right. But to explain the actual spark of consciousness, the text points to modern frameworks, specifically the Penrose-Hameroff theory.
Oh, okay. What does that theory argue?
It suggests consciousness might not be a standard biological or chemical reaction at all, but rather a quantum phenomenon.
Wait, quantum?
Yes. Inside our brain cells, there are these tiny structural scaffolds called microtubules. The theory posits that these microtubules allow for what's called quantum collapse.
Okay, you have to break that down for me.
Sure. So in quantum physics, particles can exist in multiple possibilities at once until they are observed or interact with something. At that point, they collapse into a single definite state.
Right, like Schrödinger's cat stuff.
Exactly. The theory suggests that billions of these microscopic quantum collapses happening inside your brain's microtubules. That is the physical mechanism of consciousness.
I have to push back on this a bit.
Go for it.
Are we just replacing a biological mystery with a quantum physics mystery? Because frankly, that sounds like taking a word nobody fully understands, consciousness, and duct taping it to another concept nobody fully understands, quantum mechanics.
That's fair.
It just sounds like sci-fi jargon to patch a hole in our knowledge. Like, we're assuming the brain is just this weird generator.
And that is a highly valid critique, which is why the text introduces a completely different analogy to rethink the problem. What if the mistake we are making is assuming the brain is a generator at all?
What do you mean?
Well, we always assume the brain churns out consciousness the way a power plant churns out electricity. But what if the brain is actually just a receptor, like a television or a radio?
Oh, wow. That flips the entire paradigm upside down.
It does. Think about it. A radio doesn't physically create the music that comes out of its speakers.
No, the music is an invisible signal broadcast through the air.
Exactly. The radio just happens to have the exact right hardware, the antennas, the circuitry, to tune into that specific frequency and translate it into sound.
Okay, so if the brain is just a radio receiver for intentionality, it's not generating my mind, it's just picking up the signal of consciousness that exists independently.
That's the idea.
But let me test that logic. If my brain is just a radio, what happens when someone goes under general anesthesia? I mean, the signal doesn't die, right?
The text actually addresses anesthetics under this exact framework.
Oh, it does?
Yes. If we follow the microtubule theory, anesthetics don't destroy consciousness. They temporarily suspend it by altering the physical hardware.
Oh.
They disrupt the quantum vibrations in the microtubules. So, to use your radio analogy, the radio isn't broken and the radio station didn't stop broadcasting.
But the antenna has been temporarily disabled.
Precisely. The hardware can no longer tune into the signal until the anesthetic wears off.
That is wild. Okay, so if the mind is this biological radio tuning into reality, how does it translate that raw static into the meaningful world we see? Like, how does it build the dictionary it uses to organize all this chaos?
To answer that, the paper dives into how the mind categorizes existence. And the very first tool the mind uses is the distinction between essence and existence.
Oh, here's where it gets really interesting, because this is a heavyweight philosophical debate. Does a thing's essence precede its existence, or does its existence precede its essence?
It's the classic standoff between Plato and Sartre.
Right.
Plato argued that the world of essence, the conceptual blueprint of a thing, comes first. For Plato, the physical objects we see are just imperfect physical copies of a perfect metaphysical idea.
And Sartre?
Sartre argued the absolute reverse. He claimed existence precedes essence. Things just pop into existence raw and meaningless, and it is entirely up to the conscious mind to slap an essence onto them after the fact.
Okay, let me see if I can ground this in a modern example.
Sure.
Imagine a smartphone. If I'm the engineer who built the smartphone, I know its essence. I designed its purpose before it physically existed. Its essence preceded its existence.
Correct.
But if I drop that same smartphone in the woods, and, like a caveman, find it, he has no idea what its essence is. To him, it is just a raw, physical object existence.
Yeah.
He might decide its essence is to be a shiny chopping tool or a mirror.
Which highlights a sharp point from the paper. Unless you are the actual creator of something, it is incredibly difficult to define its true essence.
Yeah, you're just guessing.
You are largely just guessing at its purpose based on how you experience it, and because of that ambiguity, the mind is forced to create its own abstract structures to make sense of the physical world.
And that leads us to the birth of mathematics, right?
It does.
This part of the text genuinely changed how I see the world. The author points out something so simple but just profound. In astrophysics, we constantly talk about the birth and death of stars. But we never talk about the birth and death of triangles.
Because you can't build a triangle out of carbon or hydrogen.
Right. I want to offer a thought experiment to you, the listener.
Yeah.
Wherever you are right now, look around your room, find two objects sitting next to each other. 2 books, 2 coffee cups, whatever.
Okay.
You can see the physical objects. You can touch the paper or the ceramic. That is the concrete, reductive reality. But where does the two live? Where's the two-ness? You can't touch a two. You can't weigh it.
The way the text answers this is fascinating. It describes mathematics as a comprehensible secondary quality.
Secondary quality.
Yes. To understand that, think about how human vision works.
Hmm.
Your eyes do not actually see color. Color does not exist out in the physical universe.
Hey, really?
Really. What exists are physical transductions. Light waves of varying frequencies bouncing off objects. Those waves hit your eye, travel to your brain, and your mind generates the subjective experience of the color red or blue.
So going back to our analogy, the radio translating the physical static into a song.
Yes, exactly. And the paper argues that math works the exact same way. The physical world is full of shapes, quantities, and spatial relationships. The mind receives that raw physical data and interprets it as shapes and mathematics.
So the two doesn't live in the coffee cups.
No, the two is generated inside your skull as a way to categorize the physical data.
Which means math, space, and time don't have some independent eternal existence floating around in a void somewhere. They burst into existence simultaneously with matter.
Right.
You can't have space without physical matter to occupy it, and you can't have math without physical matter to quantify.
And we can actually ground this in modern physics. The paper briefly brings in Einstein's theory of relativity to show how physical and metaphysical realities are tethered.
How so?
Well, time isn't a constant, invisible ticking clock in the background of the universe. Time is physically bound to matter and gravity.
Oh, like gravitational time dilation.
Yes, proven by atomic clocks. Time moves slower the closer you are to a massive physical object. And if you travel at the speed of light, time literally stops.
Wow. So space and time are physically anchored to the 118 elements. But our concept of space and time, our feeling of the past, our anxiety about the future, that is entirely metaphysical. It requires our minds to construct it.
Correct. So we know the mind hallucinating concepts like math and time helps make sense of matter. But how does it keep everything organized?
Yeah, because if every single object we looked at was a completely unique, isolated mystery, our brains would overload in 5 seconds.
We have to relearn what a door is every time we walked into a new room.
Exactly. We need a filing system.
And that filing system is built on another crucial distinction from the text, the difference between a particular and a universal.
Okay, let's break that down.
Let's use color again. If you see a specific red physical object, like a red stop sign, that stop sign is a particular. It is reductive. It exists in one specific location in space and time.
Got it.
But the concept of redness, the property itself, is a universal. And universals are non-reductive.
And this leads to a quirk in reality that, kind of broke my brain. Physical objects, the particulars, cannot be in 2 places at once. The physical stop sign cannot be in New York and Tokyo at the exact same moment.
Obviously not.
But universals completely defy the laws of physical location. The property of redness exists simultaneously on that stop sign in New York, and on an apple in Tokyo, and on a car in London.
It is an incredible superpower of human consciousness. It allows us to group reality by shared properties.
Oh, so when you see a dog, you don't just see a random particular arrangement of atoms. Your mind recognizes the universal concept of dogness.
Yes, which lets you instantly predict how it might behave based on the universal category.
It is nature's ultimate compression algorithm. It saves us so much processing power.
It really does. But there is one final, incredibly profound rule the text uses to explain how we organize existence, and it's the difference between what is contingent and what is necessary.
Okay, this is where philosophical definitions can get tricky. Break down contingent for me first.
Contingent things have a beginning, they depend on other things to exist, and crucially, they could have been otherwise.
Okay, like what?
For example, human beings are contingent. We had a beginning, we depend on oxygen and gravity, and history could have easily played out so that we were never born.
That makes sense.
A contingent truth is true in our current world, but we can easily imagine a different world where the sky is green instead of blue.
Okay, yeah, I can easily picture a universe with a green sky. So what is a necessary truth then?
Necessary things must be true in all possible worlds. You literally cannot imagine a world where they aren't true. The paper brings in a famous example from the philosopher Saul Kripke. Water is H2O.
2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen.
Exactly. Before science advanced, we just knew water by its phenomenological qualities. It was wet, clear, and quenched thirst.
Right.
But once we scientifically discovered its reductive essence, that it is fundamentally made of H2O, it became a physical necessity. Think about the mechanism here. In any possible universe you can imagine, if a substance is water, it must be H2O.
Because if you try to imagine a universe where water is made of, like gold and carbon, you aren't imagining water anymore.
Right. You are imagining a completely different substance. Because the very definition of the thing is its atomic makeup, it cannot logically be anything else. We can explain what it is with absolute necessary certainty.
But there's a massive catch to that certainty, isn't there?
There is. We can explain exactly what water is, but we can never, ever explain why it is what it is.
Yeah.
Why does combining 2 invisible hydrogen gases with 1 invisible oxygen gas create a wet, life-sustaining liquid? Why doesn't it create a toxic purple smoke?
Yeah.
Or a heavy metal?
We don't know.
We don't. It just does. This is what philosophy calls factual necessity or brute facts. The physical rules of the universe just are what they are.
It's like we reach the absolute edge of human understanding. We ask the universe for the manager, and the universe just shrugs and says, because I said so.
That's the limit of the reductive world. We can map the universe down to the subatomic quark, but the fundamental why of its rules remains locked away, completely inexplicable.
So what does this all mean? We've covered Leibniz, quantum microtubules, and the essence of water. Why does this dense exploration of metaphysics matter to you listening to this right now? I think, honestly, understanding this paper fundamentally shifts how you walk through your day.
It strips away the illusion that you are just a passive audience member sitting in a theater watching reality happen in front of you.
Exactly. You aren't just passively walking through a universe of 118 elements. Your subjective, intentional mind is actively participating in defining reality every single second. Without your mind acting as that radio receiver, tuning the physical static into music, there is no redness. There are no triangles.
The 2 coffee cups exist, but the 2 does not.
Exactly. Even the sensation of time passing is a live collaboration between the physical matter of the universe and your metaphysical mind.
And that collaboration is ultimately what defines our humanity. The paper makes a powerful assertion toward the end.
Oh, yeah.
It states that what truly separates humans from animals isn't just complex language or tool use, it is metaphysics.
Metaphysics.
Animals are aware of reality. A dog knows the physical world exists. It knows where its food bowl is. But humans are aware of the nature of reality. We can step back, look at the physical world, and ask why.
Right.
We can conceptualize essence, universals, and necessary truths. As the text argues, every human being is inherently a metaphysician.
Because a dog will never sit around wondering if its existence preceded its essence. It just eats the food. We are the universe trying to understand itself. And, that brings me to a final lingering question. A provocative thought for you to take with you today, which builds right on top of this paper, but takes it a step into our immediate future.
I have a feeling we are leaving biology behind.
We are. If what separates humans from animals is our ability to be metaphysicians, our capacity for intentionality, and understanding the non-reductive world, what happens when we talk about artificial intelligence? We are currently building AI out of the exact same physical, reductive 118 elements that make up our world. Silicon, copper, electricity. We are snapping together massive piles of physical Lego bricks.
And we know from McGinn that our own brains are just 80% water, yet they miraculously generate an immaterial self.
Right. So the ultimate question is, will an AI built purely of physical Legos ever develop that same subjective immaterial self?
Yeah.
Will the silicon ever turn into a radio that can actually hear the broadcast of consciousness?
That is the million-dollar question.
Or will it remain forever trapped in the reductive world? Will only ever be able to simulate a description of the castle without ever actually experiencing the magic of it. It's just something for you to think about the next time you type a question into a machine and wait for it to tell you about the nature of reality.